Bonjour, hello everyone. I'm Nata, host of the NATA PR School podcast. You're a successful entrepreneur or marketing manager and you're about to launch a new product or service, or you've been selling your goods for quite some time, but you want to learn how to increase your visibility, get known, and reach more clients? At NATA PR, we deal with real clients every day and we'll teach you simple, fun, and honest PR solutions. You'll learn easy steps to combine PR to social media right now. Keep listening and let's get started. Bonjour, hello, and welcome to this 95th episode of the NATA PR School podcast. For this 95th episode, I'm thrilled to welcome Janylène Turcotte, founder of Hypno Coach, a new entrepreneur, and also a very dear friend of mine. She was a student from the first ever cohort, but that was in 2020, my God, time flies, from the very first NATA PR School podcast. And before I let her speak, I always introduce my guests. So she's a clinical hypnotherapist from this amazing technique that you will find, it's called RTT. RTT stands for Rapid Transformational Therapy. And Janylène masters this this technique that is amazing, I'm telling you. And it really allows you, actually, RTT allows you to make changes in your life quickly. It doesn't take years, I can tell you that, because I also work with her. We'll talk about it a bit in a few minutes. She's also an ICF certified coach. She used to work as a human resources professional. She was holding, top senior management positions for the longest time for large corporations that were spread out all over the world, like international corporations, for many, many years. She's like me. She's super curious. She's in constant training, learning new things, and she loves to ask questions to discover the infinite resources we all have, that we all have in our brain. So she loves to discover what our brain conceals. Thanks for agreeing to join me. Janylène, it's such a pleasure to have you on the podcast today.
Thank you so much for the invitation. It's really an honor for me to be present on your podcast and share all those great things about PR and hypnosis.
I know,
and
it goes hand in hand, actually. It goes well together.
I know.
As you know, I always ask this first question to all my guests because then I discover things I don't know about each of them. So who is Janylène Turcotte?
So from a professional standpoint, I'm somebody who helps people unblock. It's as simple as that, with different technique. And from a personal perspective, I'm a 50-something woman who is looking to keep on improving, developing, growing, and more than anything, just enjoy living, breathing in, breathing out. And just
That's a
living.
good point. Sometimes we forget about that because we have all these goals. We want to grow. We want to make more business. We want to have more clients. And sometimes we forget to just look around where we are now. And this is interesting because every time I'm talking to you, because you need to know that we met in a coaching training, Janylène and I, maybe more than 10 years ago now, I think. And every time I'm talking to you, this is why it's so great, because then I'm like, oh my God, this is where we are, both of us. Like, we've come from so far. We've done so much in 10 years. And I remember, I think it's Tony Robbins that was saying that people underestimate what we can do in 5 years, 10 years. And we always want to do big things quick and fast, but sometimes we forget to just stop and look around what we have accomplished, and what you've accomplished on your side is just amazing. And you're now an entrepreneur. I'm going to say it, a solopreneur.
Yeah.
And when we met, you were working full time. You had this high position, managing I know it was crazy what you were managing at the time, human resources all over the world for a large corporation. And you were always saying, oh my God, I really admire entrepreneur. And now you're one. So what have you learned becoming an entrepreneur?
I know. Well, first, you were my model, right? And I don't say it too because you're there. It's true. Like, you know me, like you were my model. Like we would met on Sunday and you would always talk to me about what you were doing. And I thought, wow, I was so in admiration. The biggest difference, I must say, between the corporate world and being an entrepreneur, a solopreneur like me, and this is for me, it's the voice. And what I mean by that is I used to travel and people would say, oh, what do you do as a living? Well, I'm a, national director for this company. And then people, oh, you must be smart. And they have an idea about who you are. They have a label. And you are carrying the value and the image. And when you work for corporations that are very respected, it boosts your ego, right? You feel like you're that. You are whatever this corporation with the great images, you are that great image too. When you start to be an entrepreneur and have your voice, put yourself out there, show up to the world and show up in the most transparent way about who you really are and what you bring to the table. This is where, for me, the big difference is. And this is exactly my why. My why is there were no container. There were no container in this world where, and this is my belief, of course, where I could have a real voice, where I could really speak on my own behalf, on behalf of my experience, on behalf of the things I've learned, my skills, my talent. And now when I develop approach with clients, with experience, and I know that I'm developing things that they now belong to my environment. I don't have to give it to an employer who's going to run with it and make a lot of money with it. So that's really where it's really about having a voice.
This is true because when you work for another company or for someone else, obviously you serve that person or that client. Now it's different. Of course, you're serving your clients as well, but you're serving them the way you want. It's you decide how you serve them. You decide how you show up and what you want to share with the world, actually, right?
And on the countryside, you don't have anybody to fall back on.
True.
So you need to be hyper conscious, right, of what you do. And missteps might have a bigger consequence than when you're in a large corporation where there's always something or somebody to cover up. True. If you mess up. Right?
True. If you mess up, it's not 100% your fault. It's also the company that chose you that's responsible.
There's a lot of other levers that you can say were at play. But when you are out there as a solopreneur and you have outsourcers, like I work with a few outsourcers, right? I cannot say, well, it's my outsourcers' fault.
Yeah,
right?
I know. Yeah, we have to take responsibility.
So you have to take full
responsibility. It's interesting when you become an entrepreneur. I'm so used to that. It's interesting you mentioned that because I kind of forgot that, but it's so true. And it's interesting, especially if we have listeners who just launch their own company or solopreneurs, so you know what we're talking about. And let's go back to NATA PR School just for a few seconds because thank you so much. Yes. You were part of the first cohort ever in 2020. Mm-hmm. It's almost 2 years now. So what?
I know, it was a great experience.
What did you remember or what did you learn and what are you still using from what you've learned?
So first thing that really amazed me and surprised me is what is the reality of the journalists and influencers and everything? What's their world? So once you understand what their world is, if you send something to them or if you try to attract their attention or something, you understand where they come from. And that's so valuable. So the other thing I've learned, and we're going to talk about it, is also about how to use whatever is happening in the world, right?
The trends or, what people are talking about.
Exactly, the trends and everything. Yeah. And the other thing is, of course, there's no off record. Right? And that is so important because I'm a trustworthy person. Like I trust people. I trust people.
Yeah, if you ever do an interview with a real journalist, let's say out there, let's say the New York Times interviews you, whatever you say, even if they say, well, this is off the record, tell me what's, the worst case scenario of this or that, or the worst thing you've ever done, know that off the record doesn't exist. So they might write
doesn't exist.
Exactly what you just told them, which might be a very uncomfortable situation, let's say, about something that happened in your life, and they're going to write about it. So they can because you mentioned it to them. So voila.
And they're the subconscious work. So we did that 2 years ago, right? And subconsciously, I have picked up on a lot of things that I didn't necessarily apply at the time. But now I'm finding myself being the executive contributor for the Brains magazine. And this is PR,
this
right?
This is great PR.
This is great PR. But I know you planted those seeds in that course. But it's only now that I realize it, because I went on and I did it. And that's the thing with the subconscious mind. You can not always give credit to whoever gave you an idea or something, because you're planting seeds. And when the plant comes up, you don't say, oh yeah, it's because of that person or this course. But obviously I learned something, right? Because now I'm using it, right? But I never really say, okay, this is what I've learned at NATA PR School, and now I'm going to apply it. It's more subtle sometimes. It's just those seeds.
This is interesting.
And then you find yourself, right? You find yourself just doing the right thing.
I know you've been invited to some podcasts too, because this is also PR. Like if you are, someone invites you and you can tell your story, like we're doing right now. This is this is PR too, so know that. And but also don't overestimate meeting people. And what I love now with the web, and now that especially through the pandemic, it was like that before, but it's even easier now, and we can meet people from all over the place. And these trainings, when sometimes people say, oh, it's a group training. No. It's super rich and powerful. You're going to meet amazing people. And this is where we all met our podcast producer, Francis. I say hello, Francis.
I know.
Thank you. So if you're looking for an amazing podcast producer, you can contact me, and I will, with great pleasure, explain and talk to you about what Francis does. He's an amazing producer. So that's another part too. And let's go back to trends, because trends is really a big thing that I teach, because this is how you're going to attract the attention of, let's say, top tier media or magazines or journalists or even influencers. If you find a trend that they're talking about right now, they might be very interesting in talking to you. So what are the trends that you let's say talk about right now in your own material?
So how trend have influenced my business? Can I tweak the question like this? Sure, yeah. So the trends, So anxiety first. So when I saw trend. At the onset, right, that there was so much, I went and I got trained in CBT for anxiety to have more tools to add to help people with symptoms, alleviate symptoms of anxiety.
There's so many people that claim having anxiety problems right now.
So whatever is happening out there, I thought, wow, this is something I need to understand better, and I need to be better tooled for addressing this. So that's one. The second one now is to have a critical eye. I find like right now the big trend is empathy, right? You have to be you have a lead with empathy. You have to have an organization with empathy. And I'm not against empathy, don't get me wrong. But what I feel is that we kind of selling the idea through the media that you can implant a chip of empathy into a manager and he's going to suddenly become empathetic, right? The reality is that there's nothing worse than false.
Someone that's forcing it. I can relate. I can relate to
forcing that. You to be right. So I think when you look at the trend, for me, is how is that trend? You can twist it to the angle, and if I think about empathy, then I will say, okay. People will come to me and they'll say, oh, you know what? I'm not an empathetic leader. I need to be more, I need to show more empathy. I need to this, because they read about all this and then they feel bad about themselves. And I always tell them, you know what? If you wouldn't have empathy, you wouldn't ask me about that question. People who have no empathy, they don't even think about getting it. Or they think about
solved.
Getting it
from means you have empathy if you think you're missing some.
Exactly, right? But also, right? So it's also reading through and avoiding to copy, because there's a lot of, I work in programming the brain, right? We program the brain to new beliefs. Well, the idea is that our society is programming us all the time. And we forget about some of the healthy beliefs we had. So if you're a great leader when you're a child and you think, oh, I love to lead and this is so easy and people love to follow me and wow. And then you go out into the world and you go to all those courses that they're being thrown at you that you have to follow in the corporate curriculum. And it says, oh, it's so hard. You need to do this. You need to do that. You need to have this. You need to have that. And long grocery list of everything you need to be a good leader. Then you forget that for you, it was easy. You lose track of that healthy belief you have. So when I think about the trend, I want to make sure that people are aware that the trends are also programming them and they lose track sometimes of the healthy things that they had inside themselves.
This is interesting because this is true. We read about something and it's a team, let's say empathy being a leader with empathy, lead with empathy. So the more you read about it, then you question yourself and you start believing that you have it or maybe that you don't. And it's just a belief, right? As you say all the time, it's just another belief. So this is interesting. And this is why trends are so interesting because in PR, we call them like keywords and key messages that we use and that we repeat and repeat and repeat. So this is exactly what it is. And sometimes, well, if you are more in the product, if you're selling products, so we talk about this, you've heard me talk about the local trend, for example. That's another one. If you're local, tell your story because media want to know about you, what you're producing locally. And at the beginning, I remember, beginning of the pandemic, I'm like, I'm not sure it's a trend that's going to last, but I can tell you now it's a trend that really is going to be there for I guess a long time, especially with everything, with all the countries now helping companies to produce more locally. We've all realized that we were so dependent from China. So this is like big trends. And it's good to know that because then you can tell your story through that spectrum, let's say, or you can, like Janylène, you decide to do a podcast on a team, and we talked about it a little bit in French. Yeah, I know, to me, like it strikes me when I see, the toxic woman, the toxic leader, the woman leader that creates toxic environments, and this isn't a word we never heard before, like a toxic work environment. Like, wow. So this is why we have to be careful also how we present that and what the meaning we give, that people give to something. This is so interesting.
You tell me because you're the specialist, but for me, the trap is to look at the trend and first don't question it. Like take it as a face value. Yeah. Like first, put it to the test. And what is the twist that you can give to the trend that is authentic to you? You're just not following an idea. You're taking this idea and you are bringing it into your own filters, your own world, and you make it something that adds value. It's not a copy-paste of everything you've been reading over and over again. It's like, how can you take the trend? Like anxiety was one, right? I went and I got those tools that I added to my toolkit to help people. So how could I use a need and a trend to bring value into people's world, but not just by saying, oh, everybody's so anxious. I don't think it's going to help anybody to tell that everybody is so anxious. It creates more anxiety.
Yeah, you and I, we had that conversation. Like many people claim having anxiety. They probably do. Many of them maybe do. But it's also because we talk about mental health so much, which is a good thing. But it creates something else on the other side. So that's a good point. So for us in PR, trends are super important. This is how we attract the attention of journalists and influencers. But then what's interesting is exactly that. So you don't have to fall in the same trap. You can decide that, let's say, anxiety, how we decided to approach, let's say NATA PR decided to approach anxiety with their...
To respond to that.
And we've hired Janylène and we work on this and this is how we addressed it. So we didn't fall in the trap, but it's how you're going to attract the attention of journalists because it's a buzzword, people want to they read about it. So they know people are looking for it. This is what a trend is, really. That's interesting, yeah? But tell me about, what are your best practices? Because I really admire and inspired by what you're doing, because you spend a lot of time online. And I know you have the podcast, but what else do you do?
So when I started the first year, I did every day with Ripple. There was kind of an application, a little video. I did that for a year, every day, 365. And it brought me people, and I was using pictures that I had taken, and I was putting that with the subconscious mind, the brilliant mind. That was a year. After a year, I was
So you didn't have a beautiful website with all these crazy functions. You didn't have anything.
No.
So listen to this, people. Myself. She made money without having like great tools.
Yeah.
Wow.
I didn't have a branding. I had my friend Catherine had I'd draw a little JT, which is my logo. She draw that on Word, the word processing document, and we did that, and that was my logo for a year, and the colors, whatever, right? And it was okay. And I was very happy with it. In fact, I looked at it and I thought it was extraordinary. And because I felt good about it, the energy I had was transmissible, right? And then after a year, I had earned enough money to pay somebody to enhance my website, to develop a branding and colors. And she took my pictures. One thing I invested in, I would say, pictures.
Yes.
The first year, I did hire a good photographer. I still have those pictures now. My hair is white, so I need to get other ones done. But I invested in a young photographer and a makeup artist, and somebody to choose clothes for me.
That's a good tips.
And that was the $1,000 investment that probably had a return 20-fold, 30-fold, 50-fold, because I had probably, I think I had 30 pictures. That I could use, and I have used and reused and used. So I think that's a good investment when you start.
This is so true, because then you're selling yourself. So this is interesting. It's like taking an amazing picture of the product you're selling. If the product is yourself, you should treat yourself as work on the packaging in the sense that wear appropriate clothing. You can rent and borrow, and people are expert in doing that. You can hire a stylist, a hair and makeup, a nice photographer, and there's always those young and upcoming photographers that don't charge fortune.
Yeah, and they're excited.
Yeah. They want to do that.
They want to do it. They're excited. Yeah. I think the mistake that people do in the first year, and when I coach my entrepreneurs, what I always tell them is, don't spend 100% of your time building your website, blah, 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 building everything and not going out there to get clients. Yeah. Like, you need to go out there and get clients. If you have a page that establish you're a real person with your credentials and maybe one offer, you can start that way. You don't have to have everything ready to go, because then you're going to have spent so much money and you're going to have to be so stressed to go work and pay for what you spent in the first year. I went the other way around.
I know some companies, they launch this amazing product and then they come to us, they have no more money. Exactly that. They have no more money to spend to get known, to promote themselves, or to make some noise. I'm like, you spent too much money on your packaging, my friend. You should have started, sending it out, having it tested by people. So it's the same thing if you're like Janylène selling a service. Go out there, talk to people. I know some other companies that really they did not even have a website. They started with Facebook, or they started with Instagram or LinkedIn.
Absolutely.
Which is accessible today. And we had that discussion. Like when I started my company 22 years ago, internet didn't even existed. It was in its infancy. It was like really at the beginning of it. So it was another ball game. And now there's so many resources. So before we pass to the next questions, I wanted to go back to, how did you find this technique RTT, like the rapid transformational therapy? How did you find that? Because and we work together. I'm not hiding it, because I think you're amazing. But tell us a little bit on how you found that technique.
So 7 years ago, my employment got terminated. At the time, I had a lot of issues. You were there, I had an alcohol weight issue. I had a lot of issues, and I had a lot of talent. So I could learn. So I went and I did hypnotherapy to help me. And it helped me so much. I was already a coach at the time that I said, you know what? This is what I want to do. This is what I'm going to do. I felt so good. I'm like, oh, I'm so free. I'm so happy. I want everybody to be happy as I am. I want everybody to be as free as I am. I want to share this with the world. Yeah. And you know me, you and I are the same. We always want the best. We want the best clients. We want the best of everything. Like we strive to get quality. Like we like quality. True. Over quantity, right? To start, and then quantity comes, right? But then I searched and I found Mary Sapir, and I thought, wow, she stopped. This is what I want to do. So I booked a session for me with a woman in London, in UK. I did the session, and then I remember I was in an hospital. I went scuba diving, and just before scuba diving, I fainted, and I was very sick, and I was in an hospital, and I'm like, okay, I got nothing to lose now. I'm gonna go to LA and become a hypnotherapist.
Incredible.
I went there. I came back almost 3 years now. And,
congratulations. So you're now a full-time entrepreneur, and you're helping many business people. So if you started your business, not just business owners, but I know you're amazing with people like me who are sometimes we're so stuck in everything we need to do. And, if your head is spinning and you just need to look into your brain, please contact Janylène. She's going to be helping you for sure. So what should we wish you in the short term? So I know you're working on different projects, so tell us a little bit.
I think you should wish me to continue to have a voice. Continue to have a voice, to show my voice, and to develop things that are unique to me and my experience. Because this is where I bring value. If I replicate what everybody else do, I can only bring so much value. But if I go with a special ingredient, if I put together everything that is unique about me, and I'm not saying that with a big ego, it's like we all have unique things. It's just for us to dig and find them, right? So if I can continue to do that and finish my book in a year, I think that's already a
book. So I'll invite you for when you launch your book. That's going to be fun. I can't wait to read it. And I know there's a new platform also. You've been invited to be part of an exciting project.
As a founder of Blossom, that's amazing.
So when that's going to be all launched, I'll re-invite you for sure.
This is launching next couple of days.
Okay, so please watch it. It's called again?
Blossom.
Oh, do you have the information? Maybe I can put that also at the bottom of my podcast. Send me that. I'll put it there. And so if you want to work with Janylène, of course, I'll have all the indication. It's hypnocoach.ca, but everything's going to be under the podcast for sure. You can also find her on LinkedIn. I think it's Janylène, but if you look like hypnocoach.ca, they will find you very easily or on LinkedIn. Very easily.
Yes.
Hey, thank you so much for joining me today. And I hope we'll record another podcast very quickly with all your new projects. So voila, I hope this I call it PR break. This little PR break is inspiring you, and that these discussions, my guests inspire you, gives you some ideas about your business too. That Janylène and I will listen to many other podcasts, and I love when I have those new ideas on what I should be working on in my business. So hopefully you've enjoyed this podcast and that you'll be joining me next week. À la semaine prochaine. Hey, you want to learn more about how to implement PR strategies? Head on to natapr.com and get on our list. You will also receive the NATA PR model on how to create a successful PR campaign. If you want to become a client, just send us an email to nata@natapr.com. Talk to you next week. À la semaine prochaine.